order. Before we do anything else, I'd like to ask for a moment of silence. The Darien community lost 2 of our residents last night, and I'd like us to just take a minute to honor that, please. With that, I'd like
Before
to
you go
ask-
any further, did we tell TV 79 we're on?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for asking. May I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from the meeting on March 24th, 2022? Mr. Riley, second. Mr. Martin, all in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous. Thank you. I'll open it up to public comment. I understand we have 2 folks here. Please, just step up to the podium, say your name and address. And I guess
there's no podium. I guess you could probably just.
Yeah, just come right
Yeah,
up.
the only
come
mics are
here
right
because the
there.
only mics we have are right here. And we want TV 79 to get you.
Stand?
No, you can sit, please.
Thank you. My name is Doug Bora, and I live at 38 Nearwater Lane in Darien, which is located 2 houses south of Henley School. I'm here with my neighbor Tom Ross of 9 Pastor Lane in Darien, and we are abutting property owners with an aligned interest. My purpose in speaking to you tonight is to make sure that the building committee is aware of a Henley School stormwater runoff problem that has damaged our properties, my property and Tom's property, and several other residential property owners in our neighborhood. Henley has below-grade storm pipes that were installed around 1947. They're very old to the then existing standards. When it was built, its water engineering consisted of 4 catch basins that served as conduits for surface water runoff and roof water runoff. According to the town maps, those 4 catch basins, there are now 11 catch basins, and they feed the same single 12-inch pipe that was installed 75 years ago in 1947. The volume of surface water at the school has significantly increased since then due to building expansion, parking lot expansion, installation of 3 portable classroom buildings, which you're going to have to demolish, increased impervious surface added for asphalt playground areas. And now there's a larger footprint contemplated. And this old pipe, I want to just bring to your attention, is overburdened and dumps a significant amount of water of the school's runoff outside its property onto the neighbors' properties. And it simply can't handle it. It's just an old overburdened pipe, and we're getting runoff from the school. So our properties, as a result, are frequently deluged with water runoff caused by Henley, and it's been getting worse, the world being what it is with these storms these days. The runoff remains as standing water on our properties and EPC regulated properties, which actually abut the 2 of us as property owners. And it can become a breeding ground, and we're nervous about it this summer and every summer with mosquito infestation because it's standing water. It's something I've got kids and grandchildren. So given that climate change and with more frequent rainstorms hitting Darien, it's appropriate to address what we think is functionally obsolete civil engineering problem that was created 75 years ago. Really, it's the time. Why now? It's the time to do it now. We've previously brought this to the attention of the town, both in writing and in person, and it's now time to really address this because you're going to be talking about renovating and expanding the school. So our requested action plan, we'd like to ask you to respond to upgrading the school's poorly maintained water management infrastructure with 3 solutions: immediate, short-term, and long-term, for you to consider. The immediate is to hire a civil engineering firm to perform due diligence on Henley's water runoff to corroborate our assertions to you this evening. You have to check that on your own, and I would ask you to hire a professional civil engineering firm to do so. Number 2, short-term fix. I'd like to ask the building committee to ask the DPW, Department of Public Works, this is the incorrect term, but to rotor-rooter the existing water runoff that discharges water from Henley onto our properties. It's really a problem. I'm going to leave pictures with you. You'll see it. And I invite any of you to come look at our property at any time. It discharges water 2 parcels and 3 parcels south of the school. It goes actually under Pasture Lane where Tom and I live, and it goes onto our properties. It's quite evident. You can see it clear as day. I can show you videos that go, but we've done it for several years now, and you can just show you videos, and you're going to, in 2 seconds, recognize there is, in fact, a problem. So that's the short-term fix. The long-term fix is to ask you to direct your committee's architect to include costs for upgrading the civil engineering to divert Henley's off-site water runoff by installing a lateral pipe from the southern border of the school directly out to Nearwater Lane. That would circumvent all the water runoff that gets spilled on our property in pipes that bring it down to our lane, and it sits there. It's been going on for years. It's now getting increasingly worse with more frequent rainstorms and heavier rainfalls within them. To put a lateral pipe in makes a lot of sense. There is an existing lateral pipe that was put in, I believe, by probably about 10 years ago for another catch basin in the same area. So I think it has a precedent of putting a lateral pipe directly to Nearwater Lane. We'd ask you to consider doing so. So I'm attaching a photo of Henley's water runoff onto our yards and EPC regulated land, which I will give to you. I'm also attaching a map of the original civil engineering in 1947 that comes from the town hall. We got it from town hall. It's your map. Okay. And you can see there were 4 catch basins put in when the school was in there. Tom is a graduate of Henley School, as are my kids. My mother went to the original Henley School. You don't even know where that was.
No.
No.
It's across the street where the fire station land is. That was called the Henley Annex.
Oh, really?
She went there, graduated in 1941. So.
Interesting. Cool.
Yeah, you probably didn't know
Preschool.
that.
Yeah.
And then the third map I'm going to leave with you is Henley's current civil engineering right now, and I've color-coded. There's 11, by my review of this, there's 11 existing catch basins on Henley's property that catch all this water from impervious surface. We're going to expand the school. That's great, but we want you to be conscious of the civil engineering that really is 75 years out of date and really needs to be addressed. You don't want standing water on the school site with little kids, and you don't want it neighbor site. So I want to just thank you very much for listening. I'm going to leave this with you and hope you take this seriously and hire a civil engineer.
Thank you for
Yes.
give that to
Appreciate
Joe.
it.
Okay.
Thank you for bringing
Thank you
that
very much.
forward. This is the exact right time for us to know
Yep.
about this. This is not
Well.
something that I've heard of before, but we
Yeah.
are in the process of getting the properties surveyed, and now is the right time to check into this. And we can, at a bare minimum, we can get in touch with Ed Gentile and find out what DPW can do and coordinate with Jeremy Ginsburg to check on the maps. Let's at least
Or we can help you if we need to.
yeah, let's
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
least
But for sure.
investigate it as the committee to see what we have.
Great. Well, thank you. Appreciate your time. Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much.
Appreciate it.
Will you get back to us at some point, just
Yes.
one another on this?
Yes. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so for our chair report, most of what I would have to say we're going to talk about later in the meeting. Dave will talk about the appropriation request. Ray will talk about in just a second about our discussion with the state and his work. And of course, we have our RFQ and our RFP out, and those are all agenda items. So I can tell you Chris has been very busy, as has everyone else on the team. Thank you certainly to Mr. Lynch.
Not Mr. Rich.
Kate Bush, Karen, and Linda for all the work that they've been doing behind the scenes to get us up and running. We are taking off. So you too, Randy. I know you've been hard at work. Okay. With that, let's start with you, Ray, the update from ONG and the report on the meeting with state and the Office of School Construction Grants and.
Okay, I brought some handouts also. We had a good meeting with the state. Michelle and the group up there were very helpful.
Thanks.
I'm gonna pass that around.
Yeah, sure.
Right. Thanks.
David, also, the front page there is the schedule that
Oh, great.
will load up.
I'm good.
Okay,
I think we're
perfect.
good. Or Sarah, you need
You'll
to-
add
We'll
this
load
to-
it,
okay.
I'll load it up to your schedule program.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
That gives you an idea what we're looking at.
Okay, great.
I wasn't able to load it up, so I figured I'd bring it tonight and give it to you. So some of the issues that Michelle brought up and the crew brought up down there were, A, was the resolutions. Well, let's start through what I gave you here. Now, the project type, we're talking about doing, we as a group here are talking about doing extension and alteration. One of the comments that came up is maybe we want to do a renovate as new. I think that's something we need to talk a little bit further about. I can talk to Mike a little bit further about that, about whether it's worthwhile or not. The difference in the categories is purely money. An extension is purely, you're adding on space, which is what we're doing, taking out the portables, we're putting a new space in for the library and on each one of the projects. The other option was alteration. The alteration projects are typically you go in to change a school to what you need, or you update certain portions of what you need. The issue that comes into play there, not everything's eligible for reimbursement. So if you're running new voice and data lines down the corridor, you have to pull out your ceilings. They'll let you replace the ceiling pads right where you're doing it, but all the rest of the pads never look new. So every time I've done that kind of a project, it's always been, well, we should have done this. And I'm not suggesting we go that route, but that's what we're looking at right now. The other option there, which was renovate as new, the funding's a lot easier. Everything becomes more eligible. And what you're doing, you're upgrading your facility to the current standards as well as extending your useful life. There's everything in the renovate as new, or most things in renovate as new, are considered eligible. When I talk about eligible, I mean the state will pick up their portion of the bill. Where if you're looking at an alteration, they tend to be a little more nitpicky, where you can paint that wall, but you can't paint this wall.
So what's the downside to the renovation is new?
Downside of renovation is new. You've got to go through a different process.
Okay.
Okay, they have to make a determination before the grant goes in. We have time to do that now.
So meaning they decide if it can be
They
eligible
decide.
for renovation as new, but as far as we're concerned, there's no con of us going, negative of
Well,
us
there-
going
there-
that way.
there
Is there
may-
less reimbursement or something, or lesser percentage or something?
The percentages stay the same, whether it's
Okay.
reimbursed, whether it's a
Alteration.
renovation or an alteration. It's still 20.3%, I believe.
Mhm.
That doesn't change, but what becomes eligible and not eligible, that changes.
But the downside, why would you not
Downside.
renovate?
Okay.
Downside, anything that you've renovated in the last 50 years becomes ineligible if we touch it.
Can you explain
But the
that?
advantage
Yeah,
there,
so what
Mike,
is-
What does that mean, Ray?
I think your last
What
renovation
is-
was in
what
19.
What does that mean if it becomes ineligible if you touch it?
For reimbursement
Your
at all?
roof, roof, for example.
Okay,
So we're not touching the roof in any one of our ed specs here,
so, but to.
but we won't need to either. So renovate is new, if we went back and decided we're gonna replace the roof,
Mhm.
that would become ineligible.
All right, but if, what about things like, one of the things that popped into my mind during the conversation was, the one from Hartford mentioned you'd have to like upgrade the windows, right? So would there be things in the projects that were not previously spec'd to be included that would be drawn into the project as additional because we're trying to qualify for renovate?
Yeah.
Yes,
See what you're saying.
there would be.
There would be, and they
Right.
could
We're
turn
looking
out.
at,
could
Mike,
be-
I'm just looking for a little support on what's not there, because I'm not familiar with the schools as much. Like the HVAC system, we're looking to upgrade
Mhm.
as part of indoor air quality, provide air conditioning, and do that.
That's in the basic project.
That's in the,
now.
that's, yeah.
Right,
it
your
falls-
life safety stuff, your schools are all sprinkled, so we wouldn't be touching that.
Right.
Uh,
What about like windows, Mike? Are there
Windows.
places where windows we would have to
The
touch?
windows, with Henley, the windows are all brand new. Royal and Holmes, the windows are 26 years old.
So we did, so that
But
would.
they're double pane with screens, they're not,
So,
you know.
they're looking at a 50-year useful life.
Okay.
So anything we can do to bring it up to a 50-year useful life is probably, is good. It's also your downfall too. So like your if you have a system that's out there, it's been out there 10 years,
Mhm.
and now it's gonna have to be 50 years. So that,
So the biggest drawback may be that we may incur additional costs.
There may be additional
Like
elements
for
above
something.
and beyond what was previously spec'd that have to be.
But in order to
How
be
do we-
more eligible for reimbursement, is that?
Correct.
We're
It's a matter of
creating other
what-
projects because we might be more eligible for reimbursement, is that correct?
well, the comment came where your alterations is limited scope-wise,
Okay,
and they don't let you expand beyond that scope. So if you have to run a line down the wall
mm-hmm,
and paint that wall,
Mhm.
okay, you get to paint the wall. You don't get to paint this wall, or the wall behind you.
But if we went the renovate as new way, we would be able to we'd get reimbursed potentially for the rest of it. But if,
Correct.
say, our windows are not up to spec, now
We'd
we
have to
just
change
started
them all.
and added to the project by now having to do windows.
Right, well,
Correct.
For renovated.
the plus is you get everything brought up to
50
as
years.
new.
right, but it's not all eligible for reimbursement.
The downside is you increase your time you're going to be on the project.
Mhm.
You know,
And
from the
scope.
simple, it takes
Yep.
And the
It's
cost.
more disruptive.
4 times as long to paint 4 walls
More
as
busy.
it does to paint 1 wall.
Okay, and then,
And you also will have a substantial cost increase.
right, does this
So
affect, sorry, go ahead.
You have to weigh cost and time versus what are you gonna get as a reimbursement factor. So for
Yeah.
a lot of school districts that get a tremendous amount of aid, you know, I mean, tremendous, anything more than we get is tremendous, you know, 30, 70,
Right.
60. It makes tremendous sense.
Right,
who
but we do
evaluates
not,
that?
and so,
The state does.
The state does.
my concern is something you said,
Of what the pro or con is.
No, as far as what, if we submit for renovate as new,
Yeah.
they'll come back with a determination.
Of
Does this
what
affect
else we would have
royalties
to do, what are the costs we may incur. So what I'm asking is who evaluates
Yeah.
if we would actually have to do windows or all these additional things to bring it up to spec? How do we know what our cost
So
benefit
I
is?
think there were 2 things that they said at the state. The first is she actually herself wanted to go talk to Kermit. I'm not sure what Kermit's title is.
Ker-
And
Kermit's one of the reviewers.
one of the reviewers, and they wanted to look at the project as it stands.
Correct.
And determine how they would, what they would assign
Got
from
it.
their point
Correct.
of view, right?
Okay.
I'm just trying to define the 2 categories.
Got it.
Yes, yes. And then I think it sounds like you're also recommending that we would do a consideration amongst ourselves here at the table,
Right.
probably in concert with what we hear from the state about what we think the best direction is. Is that your,
Yes, yeah, you have, as the building committee, you're gonna have to make a determination, you know, is it worth it to do all these other things,
right?
or is it not worth it?
So
So
that
like-
was I guess maybe the question is, how do we know, who determines
Yeah, like-
what is gonna have to
Well,
be
the
done?
state,
to-
the state
If the
pushes.
state come back to us
The
and say.
state pushes renovate as new.
But wouldn't you want like two financial, sort of two pictures of financial pictures? What would the financial picture be like if you renovated as new? Because it sounds like you're gonna have to do a lot more work
Yes.
to bring
Yes.
things to
That's
50
correct.
years
They-
in life.
Yep.
The thing from the state is the state doesn't want school districts to throw a lot of money in really poor condition buildings.
Yeah.
And so that's part of their evaluation, okay? They're gonna look at our schools and say, you know, is Royal, Henley, and Holmes, are those buildings separately or together worth, you know, offering aid on this type of a project, or are they not? Is it better that you start fresh, or you leave the 96 edition and everything else goes? So it's, you know, they're going to look at all of that.
So is it even our choice at that point? Or does the state determine?
Well, yeah, it's
No, it
always your
depends.
choice.
It depends on the
It's-
reimbursement rate, if we, I mean, we have to look at the 2 different amounts.
Yeah.
You know, the amount, what would be projected for the renovate as new, and then the
Is that-
extension and alteration?
Is that true? Will it be
The
100%?
renovation.
No,
the-
it's not gonna
The
be.
rate itself stays the same.
But the
It's
total
just
cost.
Rate
what's-
of reimbursement.
The scope is what we need to
The
see.
scope is
Yeah.
what you need to look at.
We need
Okay.
to know
So
what.
some
Oh,
of the
so
scope
there's
may
no
or may not.
change, but they prefer that you do renovate as new.
They do.
Got it.
So
Okay, so the
when-
other question, hang on a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the things that you said, just give me a really quick pause. We are doing a project where we're renovating Royal's roof, and there's a new roof being put in.
Right now.
The entire new roof. Does that affect their reimbursement rate? Does that affect that project at all?
No.
Well, it might from the point of view that they say, you know, overall condition of what you're telling us you're going to renovate,
Right.
you know, and do some work on and add on to. Is it in good condition or is it not in good condition?
Right, but we would assume because would be renovated.
Yeah, so they're gonna look at,
Okay, I'm sorry, I just
you
wanted to
know,
make
oh,
sure
they
it
did
didn't affect that.
masonry repointing, like, oh, they just changed all the windows, oh, this has a new roof, oh, these boilers are only 10 years old.
Right.
They're gonna look at all that stuff.
Right, okay.
And
Correct. Your roof you replace every 20 years.
Right.
So it becomes
When they
different process.
come back to us after she speaks with Kermit and they come back to us and they say, for each school, we think this project is, an extension and alteration, renovate as new, or let's say, for example, they came back to us and said, all three of these projects in our mind are extension and alteration projects. Will they tell us what other things we would have to do in order to get it to the renovation category?
Kermit will tell us what we would need to do to get to the renovation.
Okay, because what I'm just spitballing here, but if the projects were to all come back as extension and alteration, and then he says, okay, for Henley, you need to do these 2 extra things. For Royal, you need to do this extra thing. For Holmes, you need to do that extra thing. We could get Mike to help us come up with a rough cost estimate for what those extra things would total to, and then factor in reimbursement to come up with some way to evaluate. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, and I guess part of my question is, so say they came back with that, is that our only option to get reimbursed from them, or we come back to them and say, no, we want renovation is new, and they say, oh, okay, we'll do that? It doesn't sound like that. It sounds like whatever Kermit comes back with, that's the only option.
That's going to be our direction.
So then,
Even if
we don't
If
really
Kermit's-
have to evaluate anything.
If Kermit comes back and tells us you can't go renovate this new here,
Hmm.
that's a dead issue.
Yeah, so we're just waiting on them to tell us what we can do or not.
But, wait. So his choices are, he comes back and says, it's an extension alteration, there's no way you can get to renovation at all, that's one choice. The other choice is he says, it's an extension and alteration, but if you do X, Y, and Z, it could qualify as renovated as new?
There'll be discussion.
Okay.
So then we would need a budget for what would extension alteration look like versus what would renovation look
so it sounds
like.
like we're waiting on Kermit to give us some input first.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we'll have to juggle all those pieces
Right.
to figure it out.
Okay.
So we're waiting for them to tell us where they want to see renovated as new.
Our process that we're going forward is not, we don't need to wait for him to do anything.
Okay,
Okay? We need to make a decision June 30th,
right,
whether we go renovate as new or extension and alteration.
and we'll have the
I'm
cost.
confused then,
I
because
think
I thought we were just waiting
Yeah.
for Kermit to come back to us and say,
It's-
this is what you qualify as.
That is correct, but that's nothing to do with your approval process.
So then why do we have to wait for, what is it, that's just his opinion?
I'm not sure I follow.
It
You're gonna- you're gonna-
it has to do everything with the funding process, because it makes a difference between whether I go before the boards and say that our all-in cost is $70 million or our all-in cost
I understand
is
that,
$90
but
million.
if Kermit comes back and says.
Correct, yeah, it would.
You gotta do extension because then that's what we go with. How do we make our own decision on June 30th if he's already telling us what we have to do? That's why I'm confused.
Each project will be evaluated separately.
No, I understand that.
When he comes back, he's either going to say, you can only do an extension and alteration, or you could upgrade that to a renovation if you add these additional features in,
Yep.
and it will be one of those two.
Okay, so
That's when we'll.
we are waiting for him to say something, right?
We are waiting
That's-
for Kermit.
okay.
That's
We are waiting for him to
that's
say
when
something.
we have to
But we
evaluate.
can't, so we can't proceed on our own and just say, the heck with what he says, we're doing renovation as new because we want to. We still have to wait for him to
We
give us.
have to wait to tell him
what
if the
options
building will
those
be
are.
eligible to be
Yeah, okay.
considered for renovation under any circumstances whatsoever.
Okay.
He will tell us that.
He will tell us
Correct.
that.
And that will affect the dollar amount though.
It will affect the dollar.
Yes, because if you go to renovation, you're gonna have to add more dollars in.
Right,
More of those dollars will qualify for reimbursement at
Right.
the 20% rate.
Yeah.
right,
But it's the ratio of how much
Right.
more dollars are versus how much you
Yeah.
recoup from what more dollars qualify. And that's, there's no way to do that now.
How much destruction you're gonna see, there's a lot of factors at play.
Well, yeah, for example, the school district may say, you know what, that's great that we could qualify for renovate as new, but it means we're gonna have the kids disrupted for another entire school year, and there will be ongoing construction, and we'll have to be juggling classes and teachers and sections and whatever, and it's too much disruption. They may not want us to do that.
That's correct. But it also, it may be a larger list or it may not be, right? We have been keeping up with our buildings, so I think let's wait and hear from
Let's wait and
Herman.
see what he says, yeah.
What he sees
Keep our
based on
fingers
what we've.
crossed.
Yeah.
And you happen to keep up with your buildings, so your
Mhm. Yes.
alteration may not be a big deal.
That was the
Is what they
impression I
think.
got from your comments on it.
It's, I think you said this, but it's not that the reimbursement rate would change, it's that more, if you renovate as new, more of the costs are reimbursable.
Or eligible
right?
for that
Or
rate,
eligible for
yeah.
reimbursement.
Yes,
Okay.
correct. The rate is fixed.
20.3%
or
yeah.
whatever it is.
Correct.
And right now, the architects and the RFP are all just going off what's on the website.
Correct.
Which is base case scope.
Yes.
None of this
Which is
potential
existing
add-ons.
and extension rather than alteration. Yeah.
For now.
It won't affect what you're doing right now with the architects.
Well, it will
You're
later
gonna-
on if the scope increases.
It will later on if the scope increases.
Okay, next item, sorry, Mike, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I was just saying the scope always increases.
So next thing we talked about at the state was the actual resolutions that we presented to them. We showed them what we had. They were not very impressed or happy with what we gave them. So they gave us the sample, which is just next page, what I gave you. This is a sample of what they gave us. This is what they want to see in our resolutions. They want to see the exact wording. The next page is what I wrote up and put in front of her, and she was very happy with this. Keep in mind, David, that number 4 wouldn't happen until you get the approval of your daughters. Okay, but they do want to see that it's approval for the whole fund of everything, not just
like the
just reimbursement.
line fence with Fox Ridge.
So do we
I
just
don't know.
modify this for the governing body that's making the resolution or passing the resolution?
You can add things to it, but no, not the word.
No. It has to pass through different bodies, so
Yes.
it's not just the RTM. So we need to go before the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance. So
That's cool.
we would replace representative town meeting with the appropriate
There
body
are
or no?
2 different sets of resolutions. This is the resolution to authorize the project to be done. The resolutions that go for funding are
Yep.
drafted by bond counsel.
Okay.
And it's a separate resolution, a
Okay.
completely separate document from this.
Okay, got it. So this doesn't change any of the resolutions we
This
already
stuff-
approved?
No,
Correct.
it doesn't change the resolutions that were approved for funding purposes, no.
Fantastic.
And the resolutions,
Or the assumption of the building committee.
and the resolutions you already have on your docket already
Right,
are totally acceptable. It's how you want to regulate your body here.
okay.
And the state doesn't care. As
Okay.
long as they can see these 4
They want to see
resolutions,
those. Okay,
somewhere in that
In the
verbatim,
information,
somewhere in
yeah.
that information, that's
Got
what
it.
we need to do.
Ray, I know you've run it by her, but my recollection was that it was the Darien superintendent who was, or the district who was to apply to the Commissioner of Administrative Services on item 1.
That's the first one.
Yeah, item 1. Is it that she wants the Darien Board of Education or the Darien?
Well, it's superintendent
Representative
by,
town meeting.
the representative by the Board of Education, typically superintendent.
Understood.
Actually,
This-
I think the regulations do talk about superintendent.
Yeah. So should it read Board of Ed or should it read superintendent, was my understanding?
We can put superintendent.
Okay.
Instead of
I ran these
representative.
past Michelle,
Instead of representative.
Instead of
town
Board of
meeting.
Education.
Board of Education. On the first one, authorize Darien Board of Education to apply for the grant.
Because it's
It
actually
should say
Alan.
Darien superintendent.
Oh, got it, okay, sorry, yeah.
So we'll get revised ones of these. Okay.
Thank you for preparing.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
And the where to is warehouse, that's fine, what you have already in place.
Perfect.
Where this all says RTM, it should say Board of Selectmen, right?
So that's what Sierra was asking, whether or not we have to go back through our internal process to the Board of Selectmen first. Because it's just the, why, because you're saying because this is it's sort of formulating the building committee. And the schematic drawings just has to come from.
Yeah, the state wants certain language, precisely what they want.
Right.
But the legislative body is the Board of Selectmen.
No, the legislative body is your,
RTM.
it would be the RTM.
They make the final decision, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's one typo.
The issue, I think, is that all
I'm an engineer, come on, give me a break.
3 or 4 boards are involved in some of these decisions and pass these resolutions. So I think that, I'm just curious, do we need to have all 3 or 4 bodies?
Why don't you
Pass
take
these
this
in
back
resolution?
to
Yeah.
your board? And
Yes.
just ask how they want to be involved in this process. This is the minimum requirement to go to the RTM
This
with
is, I need the exact wording of the RTM.
Yes, yes,
How we get there,
yes.
I
So do you
assume
want
you'd
to
have to
see-
go through the whole
Absolutely,
process.
absolutely.
All right. And Ray, just to confirm, the only one who needs to approve us to prepare schematic drawings as far as the state is concerned is the RTM.
Correct.
Still blows my mind. I can't wrap my head around why the RTM has to approve the development of schematic drawings. It's part of the building process. It has nothing to do with the governing body status or the funding status. It's an administrative function of the building committee.
I'm not gonna argue with that. It's just what the state wants. Next page was just a continuation. I put it in there twice. We get down to space standard, which was the next thing they want to talk about. So what you do in the space standards, you take your, which is the next page, you take the highest enrollment period for that school, and you fill in this matrix. Keep in mind that you get, this is basically giving you allowable square footage for your building. So if you look at the matrix, the state standards space specifications for a school is 351 to 750 kids. For everything from pre-K all the way up to 4th grade, you're allowed 120 square feet. For the 5th grade, you're allowed 152 square feet. If you do the math, you'll find that 2 of your schools are over square footage wise, and one of them's under.
Which,
Henley was over, I think, 10%, Holmes is over 18%, Royal was fine.
Right. Worrells was under like 2,000 square
Yeah.
feet.
So we'll be watching enrollment. We won't get an updated, and might get an informal one, but we won't get a full enrollment report until the fall. So we'll have to submit with the enrollment numbers more or less as they are, even though we do know we still have Parklands and the change to, which one, David? Which one's changed, Sarah? Which one just changed their housing mix?
You mean the Commerce project?
Palmer's.
Just
Yeah.
changed their
Yes.
housing mix. So those two things could certainly affect our enrollment, and it's an 8-year number, right?
It's an 8-year number.
Yes, so we'll be watching enrollment, and Ray, correct me, the good news is that we have time for that. If that enrollment number does increase, we have time because the reimbursement will happen through the life of the project, right? So
Correct.
If we hit a high at some point during the project, that could just increase our eligibility.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, it comes into play at the end of the project. So if you're over in your square footage, they take that much away.
Yeah. Within 10%, right?
Within 10%. The auditor does have some leeway there, but
Okay.
he's usually pretty black and white.
So the eligible reimbursement could decrease at the end of the life.
Yes, if your enrollment goes down.
And they
If
did.
your enrollment goes down or up.
If you're oversized.
if-
Yeah,
if
if the
you're
building's too
inside.
big, so if enrollment goes down.
For example, New London, quite a few years ago, actually about 10 years ago, they were projecting out having more Navy involvement in the school system.
Yeah, you mentioned
They
that.
didn't, and their involvement went down quite a bit. So by the time they went for an audit, they lost a lot of money.
Yeah. I think, it's a discussion we'll have as a building committee. We'll have it on an ongoing basis. We're not gonna decide anything tonight or in the near future. But I think important to note, that the Board of Ed used a classroom utilization model to figure out how many classrooms we need. So our building, we may have buildings like Holmes may have more square footage because of how it was put together. So even with keeping the library the way it is, we're looking to hit a minimum number of classrooms. So we may be able to do something with the architect to affect some of this number, but we may not because we're trying to hit classrooms, and I think we want to make sure we build the right school.
The other advantage we have also, all these schools are, the original schools are pre-1950. So that square footage right there gives us some extra square footage. I asked Mike to break that out for me. He's going to get me those numbers
Oh, great.
relatively soon.
And even though I am the numbers guy, I will say I'm more concerned with building the right school for our town. And, you know, if it's a little bit less economic, then that's just something we should just do it.
And that's a decision the town
We'll have to
can make.
Yep.
And at this point here, it's really just a consideration. You're not going to see this impact you into the audit, which is 4 or 5 years down the road.
Okay. All right. Thank you for including this worksheet.
And we got enrollment sheets.
I just wanted to give you the information that I had and I knew was relevant.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Those were the bulk of it. There was a very positive meeting though,
Good.
overall. I
Good.
think everybody was happy and they know where we're going, they know where we want to go. They have copies of our ed spec, they have copies of the NCA's report. So they've got all their information that we have at this point.
Good.
So they should be good.
Good. Thank you very much.
Okay?
We appreciate your help. Thank you.
Item 5, update on second appropriation requests. So certainly we have a lot to celebrate.
Short,
Mr. Martin?
short and sweet. It's been approved through the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, and even though the schedule says April 6th for the RTM Finance and Budget Committee, that was approved last night. That is the body that's the final determining body for capital spending in town. So it's their responsibility to, convince the broader RTM that it's the right thing to do. And then Monday night is the RTM Rules Committee, which would be responsible for getting it on the agenda for the whole RTM to vote on the 18th. And the RTM Education Committee, which opines on the project from an ed spec and overall educational aspects of the project as well. So I think Jill and Chris and I will probably be on both of those on Monday night as well. But other than that, everything is on schedule, and had several conversations with Mr. Davis from F&B, and we expect to be able to get it past the RTM as well.
Good.
Great.
And Ray has agreed to come with us to Rules
Sure.
on Monday in case there's any questions about the resolutions and how that works with the state and
Thank you.
RTM.
Yeah,
So,
that'd be great.
yeah.
We have to do this right, like the first time with them, yeah.
Thank you.
Painful enough.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay. Just quick update on the architect RFP responses. We're certainly getting them. Mike, you have been hammered with questions. I think.
A lot, yeah.
Mhm.
Today there was, one was like, what, 17?
That-
Yeah.
That's this one.
Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah.
I said to Karen, who's been posting up on the town website, the 3 questions, they've all come from the 3 finalists for Ox Ridge.
Yeah,
Okay.
including today's?
There was one at the end, but from another firm that was not, but the first 3,
Okay,
those were the 3 finalists.
right.
Interesting.
For Ox Ridge, and it's, except for changing the names, it's the same RFP.
Right, right.
I'm like, really? This,
Okay.
They're thorough.
yeah, but, they have all the answers, they're up there. My question was, usually these firms and stuff, they know to keep going back to the
Yeah.
website, to keep looking to see if there are updates. But we haven't put any of these in as an addendum,
Okay.
so I don't know if that's something,
Okay. Follow up.
do you want me to follow up with
Mhm.
Kate
Yes,
next
please.
week? I'm more than happy to.
Yes.
Cumulative questions for everyone?
Yeah, you could say
Yeah.
like, well, each set of questions asked could be addendum 1,
Mhm.
or you could just have addendum 1 and list, there's a total of 28 questions that have been received from various firms. Here are the questions, here are the answers. I mean, some of them are repetitive,
Mhm.
but I just didn't want to be the one that, well, where's
Yes.
my question?
Yes. Yes.
So,
Yes. I think that's perfect. Thank you.
okay.
Okay. All right. So if you all have been up on the website, you can see it up there. We actually, everybody knows we have our, on the DarionCT.gov, we have our own website page.
Yep.
And actually we have, there's a category for bids and RFQs and RFPs, and it's up there. So,
All the documents are up there, the ed specs, the MCA document, it's all there.
yep.
Is the 5-year, someone asked me about that, is the 5-year
Strategic plan?
building condition survey
I don't know.
up there?
I will ask. I think it is though. Let me find out.
The school district strategic plan, I think, is up there separately, and it's also up there in the budget document.
Okay. Okay. Back to you, update on the vendors and the surveys we sent out.
I got the hard copy for the surveyor
Okay,
from Redness and Mead,
okay, great.
and I sent that, I think I emailed that to Chris and you.
Mhm.
Okay, so, you know, that's the firm.
Okay.
And then I followed it up because there was a question of the stream
Mhm.
under the field.
Mhm.
It's identified on the plan as 24-inch reinforced concrete pipe.
Yep,
You know, they don't have any knowledge that that's a stream, so
Okay.
they're not gonna say that.
okay,
You know, they're gonna say it's a 24-inch reinforced concrete pipe.
okay.
But they have that. I walked the site with the guy from the company, from Redness and Mead, and he made notes all over the place and on each of the plans,
Mhm.
and then he knows our timeframe.
Mhm.
Hygienics wants to come out and look at all the buildings during the April break and then get us the environmental price. He does have all the data on, you know, the hazardous materials in each of the buildings. He just wants to put his eyes on it one more time before he comes back to us, and he doesn't want to be poking around when people are in the buildings. And then I received the 2 traffic estimates that you guys have also, so.
Okay. So you're waiting to hear back from us on who to hire?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what it is.
Yeah,
I think on
we have
that,
from
on
us.
traffic, it'd be worth, Mike, if you and I kind of sidebar and line it up next to the Oxbridge proposal
Yes.
and proposals that were received, just to make sure that everything's gonna be covered.
Yep.
I remember there was like an OSTAT process we had to go through with the state DOT, so.
Yeah, that was something with the size of this building, or
Yeah,
the amount of kids that were gonna be there. There was something that tipped that.
It was I think it was, right, it was like once something got over 100,000 square feet or something like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, we should do that.
Yes.
So we'll make an effort to do that this coming week.
Thank you very
And there
much.
was a third company that had asked about a traffic proposal
Okay,
that I have to get back to.
okay, great.
I told her we'd already, you know, we were getting proposals from 2 companies,
Okay,
but I'd let her know.
okay. Yeah, might as well.
Back on the survey, given the public comment earlier, do you think that that information, is that already flowing through to Redness
That's on
and
the
Mead?
plans.
It is?
Yeah,
Okay.
they know.
Where all the 11 different
Yeah,
catch basins
I
are?
think one of the catch basins is, it's abandoned.
Okay.
It's up under where the garden is, in the front
Okay.
corner of the building. That was abandoned when they did some of the additions there. But they did add catch basins and, you know, a solid separator and you know, the long and the short of it is that there's an easement that the town has where the drain pipe runs from the last catch basin. It runs between the first and second house on Pasture Lane.
Mhm.
And it comes out to Pasture Lane, where it goes into a catch basin and goes under the road.
Okay.
When it goes under the road, it's the town.
Mhm.
And the town is familiar with the issues with the neighbors.
Mhm.
The other thing that the man spoke about, there was a catch basin that went to a dry well in the front corner of the building, and it was always a pond every time we had heavy rain. So we raised it up a little, put a catch basin in to catch surface flow only,
Yeah,
and we got permission from the town to go out to the catch basin in the street. But I don't remember what size that pipe is
Okay.
in the street, really. And up there, you're not catching a lot of water runoff like you would as you get further down near Water Lane.
Mhm.
But Ed is the civil engineer. I'm not, he would know better what those flow capacities are and things like that.
Okay.
I will check tonight, because now that you've said that it actually is a pasture lane town-related issue, I know that Ed has current engineering studies underway for 3 areas in town that, not the normal Stony Brook area type thing, right?
Mhm.
But he's doing the Tilly Pond to Grove Street section, he's doing Salt Box Lane, and there was one other, and for some reason,
I don't think it's pasture.
you don't think
though.
it's pasture lane?
No.
Okay. All right, well,
I think it's,
See, when it comes out from under pasture
North.
lane, the water goes to daylight.
right,
There's no more drainage structures.
right, and it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Trying to remember if civil and mechanicals were kind of subcontracts, I'm talking about engineering and design, of the architectural, or if they were standalone on Oxford. Do you remember, Mike, or anyone?
They were under the purview of the architect.
Okay,
He had a company, or they had a company that did their civil engineering.
Yeah.
Separate firm that was working with them when they started construction, and they kept hitting groundwater.
so part of this process on the RFPs is they'll come back with their team. Gotcha, okay.
Yeah.
Do we have any other known issues that we should be looking at this also for Holmes and Royal?
No, Holmes, the water runoff most of it goes down, surface flow through our property down to the lake, down in the back there.
Right.
And Royal, it drains out to
Mansfield.
Royal Road. No, it comes from Mansfield.
Okay, down to Royal Road, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They were just saying the property right next to Henley is the church, I believe, right?
That's the back, yes.
That's got a ton of impervious, that's
It's a
whole
big lot,
parking lot,
yeah.
St.
right
Charles.
next to the grass.
Yeah, this is
Correct.
before that.
Okay.
When you come on, there's a White House.
But they were talking about on Pasture Lane, I don't know, I guess.
Yeah, once you go up Pasture Lane where it starts turning.
Yep.
And the lady that lives behind the church,
Mm-hmm.
she's had some,
Mhm.
sheet water across her property issues.
Yeah, I'm just saying that could, I would imagine,
I think they
it
just-
could affect even further up on Pasture Lane, just, it's a ton of pavement, so it's something to keep in mind when you look at stuff.
Yeah, it's something I think we can look into, we can do a little research.
Yeah,
and come
I
back-
did
go
point
back
out
to it.
to the guy that came for the survey, the catch basin, we looked at all those catch basins, and I pointed out where the right-of-way is. We actually changed the pipe from the catch basin, the last catch basin on our property, through that right-of-way out to the catch basin on the north side of pasture.
Mhm.
That's all, that pipe is 7, 8 years old.
Okay.
And we just had everything rotor-rooted,
Mhm.
in November
Okay.
of this year, so it's just
Okay.
done.
Okay,
Hmm.
thank you. We'll look into it.
Okay. Number 8, update on the construction manager RFQ. It's posted, again, on the website.
The construction manager one?
Yep,
Oh, okay.
yep. Went on Monday. We have a new timeline for that one. I'll walk through it. Just give me a second, please. Gotta go through all these architect answers. But Kate sent an updated timeline.
Okay.
We'll send it around.
Okay.
It's somewhere in here. But anyway, that is up and posted, and we'll be looking for responses next month. So, okay. Any questions about that? No? All right. Any subcommittee reports? It's most of what we've done tonight.
The only other thing I'd mention would be a meeting, a gentleman from the P&Z specializing in environmental on Holmes property on the 18th.
Okay.
To basically just have them lay eyes on that Corbin property. Because there's a stream, there's wetland
The Curtis
conditions. Which one?
The Curtis property.
Curtis, what do they call it?
That's a good
Corbin?
one.
Yeah, I was like, oh, we're involved over there.
Yeah,
We're not on
yeah.
the Carter property, yeah.
Sorry,
Curtis.
Curtis.
Sorry, just want to make sure.
Yeah, so I just want to get out in front of kind of thoughts on existing conditions, and also that led to some thoughts about if there were options for use of that with regards to the school project, what does it mean from like an overall zoning and kind of lot combination perspective? I thought it was, of course, naively thought it was just as easy as a couple of process to, blend this onto one cohesive homes property, but there may be a lot more to
Unfortunately,
that. Nothing's that easy. But whether or not it ends up being a singular parcel or lot, that's just cleanliness. I'm talking about the ability to actually utilize it.
I think
So-
there's absolutely discussions to be had, absolutely.
Is there any considerations for where we are right now and what we're doing that?
I don't
need
think
to-
we've had the conversations yet, but I
Okay.
think we can have that conversations. And we need to talk, the town owns right now that Curtis property and is under
Yep.
the purview of the Board of Selectmen. It is not a property that is maintained by the Board of Education like the schools are, which is what Holmes is right then. So there are conversations that we would need to be had.
So it's like a silo thing. It's like the education versus the town and
Not
even though we're all in
versus, it's just
Darien.
who
Well, you know what
owns
I
the
mean.
care and custodian, yes.
Gotcha.
But
It's a budget thing.
BOE owns the property beyond Curtis, correct?
Yes.
Yes, the
Do you
current,
have to cross Curtis to get to it, or is there like a little?
No,
chain code?
Curtis is actually
Like
surrounded
offset.
by BOE property.
Yeah.
They used to go through the parking lot to get their house.
Yes.
Okay,
Right.
really? So the only thing that's
Yeah.
not BOE is Curtis itself? Because the vast majority of the land is, Curtis is a
Yeah,
small
which-
component.
Right at the front,
which
yeah.
would make it seem intuitive that it could be
Should go to
folded
BOE.
in, but I had not thought about your broader question of if there's a stream running there and there are wetlands issues, how much of it is really usable in any way, shape, or form, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, sorry.
No.
No, I was just gonna say, even if there's nothing to construct on it, although I know that we had talked potentially about some additional parking on the, what would that be, the easterly
Staging.
side.
Yeah.
But also just general, playground.
Nature's classroom
In a
type thing.
nature classroom, like whatever type of utilization of
Yeah.
basically wooded area there with a stream, that would be
Mm.
pretty cool.
If that was
Yeah.
like a feature of that school, if there's any way of us to be involved in that process. I think we had talked about when we were doing the tour of
Yeah.
like, that's environmental science 101 is having a
Right.
living stream there for kids to learn about. I mean, you teach that all the way through high school.
Yeah,
Be something
yeah.
possible if
Yeah.
if we can't build on there because it's wetlands, then maybe there's an educational opportunity.
Smart
to
idea.
Yeah,
build that in.
absolutely.
That's
Good
cool.
point.
Thanks.
Good point.
Think about that.
Yeah.
So when the property was purchased, were you on the Board of Selectmen then? You were?
No,
both of
I
you?
was-
No,
both
it was previous because that house was torn down the same time that the Edgerton property senior center was
Mhm.
taken down, which was a few years before then, so
Yeah.
it was a while ago.
But I-
2014.
2014, okay.
There you go, see,
Yeah.
he knows everything.
But I think,
Related to the schools.
Well, there's a lot, I would like to
There's a
say
lot there.
there's
A lot there, yeah.
Well, there's a lot he knows.
I think your idea of kind of looking at the property first to see what the value, like what would happen if we used it is a great one. Because I think before we try to go and say we'd like to have it, it would be helpful to understand what we're asking
Right.
for.
Absolutely.
So I think it makes perfect sense to start
Anything-
those conversations.
Anything I need to do on that, or next steps, or
No,
you
we'll
guys
kind of
know
run
the
it up the
process a lot
flagpole, so
better?
to
Okay.
speak, and then we'll figure out, but we should be having the conversation.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
What should we tell the architects? When they kind of conceptualize, you know them, they're gonna
That's
come
a
with
good
like,
question.
we'll put an amusement park here and we'll do this.
Ferris wheel.
What do we tell them? Is it open,
So, but I don't know yet, because I don't know, there, if it's wetlands, how much can we use? Like, I think that
Right.
piece of information would be really helpful to know,
well,
right?
that's coming with the surveyor.
Well, you did this with Oxford. Can you just say to them, just tell them the truth? There is this other little bit of land. We
Yeah.
don't know, if there are restrictions because of the wetlands, but it might be available. So think about it as you scheme.
And I think honestly, if we find that it's usable for traffic and that's the best use of it, then it makes sense that it goes within our project. If we find that if it's an outdoor classroom, it probably is honestly beyond the scope of this building committee. And so we wouldn't necessarily handle it. So I think let's find out if it's usable for our purposes, and then if not, it may go beyond what we do.
Okay.
Okay? Agenda review. We just came up with, we need to talk about the
Traffic study.
the traffic study next week. Anything else that we want to make sure we include next week? No? We're good? All right, with that, may I have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Martin, second. Mr. Giraldo, all in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Excellent.